Good morning. Welcome to Breakfast with Charlie State and Naga Manchetti.
Our headlines today. More regions in England face extra measures to fight spiralling coronavirus cases.
Wales joins Scotland and England by restricting social gatherings to 6 people, but only indoors.
Back down or face legal action. That's the warning from the EU after the UK plans changes to the Brexit withdrawal agreement.
Good morning. Is the economy on the mend as more of us get back to work? Official figures are later set to show the economy bounce back, but there are ongoing worries over jobs in industries hit hard by the pandemic.
And in sport, a shock for Serena at the US Open semi-finals. Her dream of a record-equalling 24th Grand Slam is shattered by the informed Victoria Azarenka, who nearly gave up tennis a year ago.
And I'm at the National Trust Chartwell House in Kent. Once the home of Winston Churchill, I'll be taking a look around. I'll also have news of some pretty wet weather for Western Scotland, the return of summer warmth for others, all here on Breakfast.
Good morning. It's Friday, the 11th of September. Our top story is that parts of the UK are waiting to find out if they'll face extra measures because of a concerning rise in coronavirus cases.
Newcastle and Gateshead councils have already confirmed they will be added to a so-called watch list, which will be published by Public Health England today. It comes as both Scotland and Wales follow England by introducing versions of the rule of 6 on gatherings of people. John Donnison has this report.
Newcastle and Gateshead councils have already confirmed they'll be added to the updated list, which will be published later. Gateshead said cases had more than tripled in the past 7 days, with 113 new ones in the first week of September. That's around 55 cases per 100,000 people. The Mayor of Liverpool, Joe Anderson, has said he fears the whole of Merseyside will be joining them because of rising infection rates there. Areas on the so-called Enhanced Support Watch List are given additional resources by the government, such as greater levels of testing, in order to avoid stricter local restrictions being brought in, like we've seen in some parts of the country. In England, it already includes major cities like Birmingham and Leeds. In Wales, Merthyr Tydfil and Rhondda Cynon Taf are being watched closely. Meanwhile, yesterday, Northern Ireland took the decision to impose restrictions in Ballymena and parts of Belfast.
So we have the opportunity now to push down on this rising curve of infection, and we must take that opportunity. We all know that we are facing into the difficult autumn and winter months, which traditionally see pressures on our health services, and our decisions today will protect those services and, we believe, also save lives.
This morning, Wales has announced it's limiting the number of people who can meet indoors at any one time to 6, and all must belong to the same extended household group. Yesterday, Scotland joined England with its own rule of 6. No more than half a dozen people from 2 households can meet, although children under 12 are exempt. John Donnison, BBC News.
Well, we're speaking to the Welsh First Minister Mark Drakeford about these changes. That's coming up after 6:30.
The European Union is demanding that the UK government ditches plans to change Boris Johnson's Brexit deal or risk jeopardising trade talks.
Northern Ireland Secretary Brandon Lewis admitted on Wednesday the internal market bill breaks international law in a specific and limited way. Our political correspondent Jessica Parker is in Westminster for us this morning. Morning to you, Jessica. So we have the EU delegates in London yesterday, and if anything, the rhetoric and the threats and the concerns about what will happen next have gone up a level.
Yes, certainly the last 24 hours, tensions have ratcheted up. There was this emergency meeting between the EU and representatives of the UK government as well to talk through what Boris Johnson is proposing to do with his internal market bill, and it clearly left the EU Commission deeply concerned. They're saying they want to see the government withdraw parts of those measures by the end of this month, even raising the prospect of legal action if they don't. And then in parallel, what you've got going on are these trade talks as well about the future relationship between the United Kingdom and the European Union. So a big cloud now hanging over those talks. Having said that, the statements coming out of the future trade talks yesterday were that there was some progress and they're going to continue in Brussels next week. But it's very difficult to see those future trade talks actually making any kind of breakthrough whilst this argument is going on about an interpretation of the past, what was previously agreed in the withdrawal agreement. But perhaps another concern for Boris Johnson will be that in Westminster, there are Conservative MPs and Lords who are deeply unhappy about what's going on. And I think we'll hear more about that next week as the legislation starts to move through Parliament.
Jessica, thanks very much.
A government department has failed to keep staff safe from COVID-19, according to an official inspection. The Health and Safety Executive says it's seen poor social distancing and a lack of one-way systems at the Department of Work and Pensions in Leeds. The DWP says it's taken urgent action to deal with the problems.
Two major research projects studying the spread of coronavirus in schools are set to begin within weeks.
Scientists at Bristol University and Imperial College London hope the studies will help schools understand much more about how the virus is transmitted. Here's more from our education editor, Branwen Jeffries.
This is the only testing done so far in schools, swab samples taken in the summer term. The level of coronavirus cases was low then. Now, all pupils are back in school in England. Cases are rising in the wider community, but still little is known about children. So, in Bristol, researchers will use saliva tests. 4,000 pupils, 1,000 staff, once a month for 6 months.
I think the main thrust of the study is really to understand the rates of infections and to be able to jump on them very quickly. So we're giving the head teachers tools to be able to spot infection early and to keep their schools open and permit the continuity of education that is so important to them.
Catching cases early could mean fewer pupils isolating. Another study in London will investigate more, following up on confirmed cases in pupils, looking in detail at if and how they pass it on. Branwen Jeffries, BBC News.
Hello, you're watching Breakfast with Charlie State and Naga Manchetti.
Time now is 7:30. The latest GDP figures out this morning show the UK economy grew by 6.6% in July as lockdown measures continued to ease.
We can talk to the Business Minister, Nadhim Zahawi, who's in Westminster for us this morning. Apologies for stumbling over your name there. Thank you very much, Minister, for joining us this morning. So the economy has grown in terms of monthly, but is still 12% smaller than before the pandemic crisis struck. What's your reaction?
Good morning, Naga, and it is good news that we've seen this 6.6% growth in the month of July. There's still more to go. I'm the Business and Industry Minister, so I look after sectors from steel, which is one of our foundation industries, to life sciences and the professional business service sector. It is good news, but I think there's more to go, and that's why we're supporting the economy and particular sectors like hospitality and food with the VAT cut, and of course with the bounce back loans and other loans. I guess the one thing to remember, to get the economy back on its feet, we all need to make sure that we follow the rules of hands, face, and of course space, and the rule of 6 as of Monday, because the way we get the economy back on its feet is if we can get people back into work, and those who are working to take on even more work, and the way you do that is by controlling the virus.
There is the Alliance for Full Employment. I'm sure you'll be aware of it. It's led by the Welsh First Minister Mark Drakeford, the Metro Mayors of Manchester, Liverpool, Newcastle, Sheffield and Bristol. There's also the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown joining other Labour politicians and those Metro Mayors as well to fight for economic recovery policies to prevent job losses, and they're calling for an extension to the furlough scheme. This is something you would have heard from before. They are calling for national institutions to focus on job creation. What do you make of their proposals? Are any of those proposals that you can take on board to help the economy bounce back?
Well, first of all, the Chancellor, quite rightly, listened to business and extended the furlough scheme out to October. We stay very close to all the sectors. I speak almost on a weekly basis to every sector of the economy, from automotive to aerospace to the professional and business services, and we listen very carefully. The interventions we've made to put our arms around the economy, £35 billion into furlough, £35 billion into bounce back scheme.
That's what you've done, but this is what they're asking for now is what you're going to do.
Well, we're as I said, we're already doing even more, because the Chancellor in the financial statement introduced another £33 billion to protect jobs. The Kickstart scheme, which is already beginning to bear fruit, firms coming forward, taking on thousands of young people, 17 to 25-year-olds, who would have otherwise struggled to get into employment. We're looking at the skills agenda with the skills minister.
So effectively, are you saying that this group is calling for measures that you've already put in place?
No, what I'm saying is we will listen to every group. We, most importantly, listen to the businesses themselves and the sectors and what they're telling us. And then, of course, we will look at all of our interventions and make sure that they are fit for purpose. That is exactly what we're doing in my department. I'm the Business and Industry Minister, with the Chancellor and with the Treasury Ministers, to make sure that the recovery is as robust as we can make it. And we are seeing good things happen. The most important thing is to continue to control the virus and get people back safely to work.
I want to talk to you specifically about business. We'll talk about, we've spoken a lot about controlling the virus. The Treasury Select Committee suggests that furlough should be extended for certain industries. And you've made very clear just in the last couple of minutes that you talked to various industries. Have any industries said, no, we don't need furlough extended for us?
Well, actually, a number of industries said that they want different types of intervention. So, for example, with the aerospace industry, we've put about £8.5 billion into supporting that industry through the Bank of England scheme, through bringing forward some of the R&D, research and development support that we give those businesses. We've given specific help to the hospitality sector with, obviously, VAT cut to 5%, with the Eat Out to Help Out scheme in August. So we look at specific sectors and what help we can give those sectors. But there's no point us actually effectively having people in suspended animation with a sort of false sense that they can continue on furlough, ad infinitum. The best way to help people is to make sure that we control the virus, we get people back to work.
To be honest, when you say suspended animation, it's not as if people who are on furlough are sitting at home really pleased that they can't go to work and do their jobs. They're not sitting there enjoying the fact that they're in this suspended animation. They need this money for support. They need this money because the jobs aren't there, because people can't get back into work.
Well, first of all, we're seeing more and more people coming back to work. I think there's only about 12% of people now on furlough, from 25% at the height of the pandemic and the lockdown.
That's half.
Sorry,
that's half of 25%. So still half of those who are on furlough are on furlough.
I'm not disagreeing with you, and I think the furlough scheme's extension to October was absolutely the right thing. The Chancellor has gone further to say that those companies that keep people on till the end of January of next year will get an additional bonus of £1,000 per employee if they work with that employee and keep them in the business. We're seeing businesses come back. We've seen the figures today. There's a real recovery in the economy, a 6.6% growth last month. We need to make sure that continues, and the way you do that is to work with the sectors to make sure that we do everything that we can to bring those businesses back to profitability.
With those measures, all these extra measures you've put in place, tell me, what's the estimation you have for redundancies by the end of October?
Well, we look at what is happening in terms of redundancies and in terms of the economy. There are figures in terms of where unemployment will be at around sort of 6.5%. I think the focus has to be on getting people back to work, but also those who have lost their jobs or those who are struggling, like the younger cohort, the 17 to 25-year-olds, specific schemes, the Kickstarter scheme, okay. £2 billion, where we fully subsidise 100% if you take on a young person who's currently unemployed for 6 months. Those are the type of schemes that I think will deliver the jobs, as well, of course, as investment in the green recovery. We're looking to invest in infrastructure, both digital and, of course, physical infrastructure, and a energy white paper that will set out our roadmap in the autumn of how we get to net zero, producing the jobs of the future. My job in the business department is to make sure that we create the jobs and the skill sets for people that match those jobs. And we work with the Department of Education on apprenticeships, with the Department for Work and Pensions, to make sure we help those people and train them and upskill them to get those jobs.
Minister, may I talk to you about Brexit? Minister, may I talk to you about Brexit, please? Can you tell me, we've seen yesterday that with the new internal markets bill, and the UK has published this bill in order to rewrite parts of the withdrawal agreement it signed in January. Why is it trying to change a deal that it signed a year ago?
Well, first of all, we're not looking to rewrite parts of the withdrawal agreement. The withdrawal agreement and the Northern Ireland Protocol we are absolutely committed to. We've already made the investment, and I'll give you an example of that, Nagar, in sanitary and phytosanitary infrastructure in Northern Ireland. That is the right thing to do. It is not about whether if we implement the withdrawal agreement and the Northern Irish Protocol, it's how we implement it. The withdrawal agreement and the protocol have in place a joint committee, which we are absolutely engaged in, to make sure that the ambiguities that were actually there in the withdrawal agreement around the Northern Irish Protocol are actually defined much more clearly. This bill that will be debated next week, and I look forward to making the argument in Parliament as to why we need these measures. What they are an insurance policy to make sure that if we don't reach an agreement in time by the end of the year, and the Joint Committee doesn't reach that agreement, we can't allow any adverse impacts on the communities in Northern Ireland. No government, no minister can allow any community within our country, within the United Kingdom, to be damaged or adversely impacted by anything. So what we're doing is looking to, if in that chance that there is no agreement in the Joint Committee, that those don't happen, and we can disapply some of the provisions so that we do not harm the peace process.
It's interesting, isn't it, that you're quite resolute that the UK government isn't doing anything wrong. Former party leader Michael Howard, how can we reproach Russia or China or Iran when their conduct falls below internationally accepted standards, when we're showing such scant regard for our treaty obligations? The former Chancellor, Lord Lamont, the government is in a terrible mess and in a hole that I don't think is easy to justify. Even a staunch Brexiteer, Bernard Jenkins, says it's very surprising. Nancy Pelosi from the United States saying, what were they thinking? There's a real danger of real damage to the UK's reputation here. Isn't a trust issue? Why should people believe we will keep our word? Isn't there a trust issue, is now the question. Why is anyone going to believe that we keep our word? Because in the words of Brandon Lewis has said that I think it's slightly, I'm just trying to find my notes here to be exactly correct. Oh, this is it. He's conceded, we are going against the treaty in a specific and limited way. You are going against the treaty that you signed.
Well, let me be very clear, Naga. We are absolutely committed to the withdrawal agreement and to the Northern Irish Protocol. As I just mentioned, we're already investing in infrastructure in Northern Ireland to make sure we deliver on that. It is not a question of if we deliver on the withdrawal agreement and the Northern Irish Protocol. It is how we deliver on that. The agreement itself envisaged for this joint committee, which we're totally committed to, I think I look forward to making the arguments in Parliament next week to demonstrate to Michael Howard and to Norman Lamont and others why we're taking this insurance policy to disapply some of the provisions if we end up in the case of no agreement, because we cannot allow any community in our country to be adversely impacted in any way. That would be completely wrong. And by the way, there are precedent for this, whether it be the German Parliament going against the European Central Bank on the basis of it's unconstitutional under Germany's constitution, or the Canadian government disapplying some international treaties through domestic law. That is already a precedent, not something we want to do. Not something. Let me just finish this point, Nag. It's very important. It is not something we want to do. We are committed to the negotiations. We are committed to the joint committee. The negotiations carry on, and we are confident in the EU negotiators and in our negotiators that by the 15th of October we should, if both sides respect each other's sovereignty and understand where we are coming from when it comes to what we're asking for, which is no more than a Canada deal or an Australia type deal. If we can't get the Canada deal, then we will be in a place that we don't need to disapply any of these provisions. But if there is a situation where, at the end of this year, there are impacts from the withdrawal agreement and protocol that would impact the communities of Northern Ireland or harm them in any way, no minister, I think, should actually stand by and watch their own communities be harmed.
There is a threat of no deal.
There is a threat of no deal.
There is a threat of no deal. The EU is threatening legal action. There is a threat of no deal. How hard is that going to hit the economy? You're the business minister. How worried are you about that?
Right, Naga, we've already done a deal. We've got a deal. We've left the European Union with a deal. Right? This is about the future relationship with the European Union. Now, I'm confident that both sides can negotiate and get to a deal. There will be bumps in the road. There are clearly still, as you heard from David Frost yesterday, gaps between the two sides on fishing and, of course, on issues around level playing field. But I think that we keep negotiating and we try and get a deal by the 15th of October. If we can't get a deal like Canada, a deal like Australia is also good.
I don't understand. You just told me we had a deal, and now you said you're negotiating for a deal.
No, negotiating the future relationship. Naga, we've already done a deal. We've left the European Union. We're negotiating on the future relationship with the EU as two independent sovereigns. Right? That is the right way to go about it.
Okay.
So this idea that there is no deal. We've already done a deal, Naga.
Nadhim Zahawi, thank you very much for your time.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.